What's up, future husbands and wives? And welcome to the Dating Life Podcast. I'm Nate J. Clark, your Latter-day Saint dating coach, and I'm here to talk dating on the road to eternal marriage. Melanie, thanks so much for coming on today. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this, especially after our conversation, kind of getting ready for it, and some of the things you've already shared with me. I feel really confident that you've got some things to share that a lot of our listeners are going to really benefit from and be able to take and use in their dating lives to be happier and feel more successful at connecting. So, yeah, thanks for being on. Do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. So, my name is Melanie. I am 32 years old, and I'm the oldest of 9 kids in my family. Have a lot of brothers, 7 brothers. Wow, and 1 sister. Yep, and then myself. I have to sit there and think about that. And then I really love horses, and I've loved horses my whole life. And I also love thinking about business and investing. I like talking about money with people. So those are some fun things about myself. As far as dating is concerned, my dating career so far has spanned 14 awesome years and continues forward. I have experienced online dating, using websites and apps. I have experienced lineups from trusted friends and sometimes people I don't even know. I've asked men out myself and have dated men who've also started out as close friends, and then also experienced the process of meeting people in person without the help of online apps and stuff. So a couple of other things that I just wanted to be sure to say by way of introduction is that it is true. I have had firsthand experience with individuals who are working with current or past situations involving pornography, substance abuse and addiction, sexual addictions and same-sex attraction, and have had wonderful dating experiences overall, but have also experienced an incident of physical trauma related to dating that resulted in the need to seek priesthood and professional assistance to work through. And I just wanted to be sure to make mention of that because for anyone listening who's experienced trauma in dating or other relationships, I wanted to be sure to just say that there is hope and there are people that are close at hand that are able to help you. So that's something I wanted to be sure to just mention outright. Another interesting fact is that I have been nearly engaged once, ring purchased and all, and most recently actually engaged with a temple date. So gotten really, really close to marriage a couple of times, excuse me, but through a turn of circumstances, this most recent time, I chose to end that engagement this year. And some of the thoughts that I have prepared for today are just, lessons that have been learned and solidified, and I continue to learn as I go through this process and, seek to build a happy life for myself as well as with somebody else in the future. So the one other thing I have to say is that, views and opinions expressed are mine and very much in the process of being built and expanded and deepened. So there's that.
I love that. I think one of my favorite things about you, Melanie, is how positive you are and the optimistic paradigm you choose to maintain throughout your experiences. And I don't know. I think that there's a lot that people can learn from that because let's face it, dating's rough.
Yes.
You go through the ringer sometimes and you get your heart broke and it hurts and you hurt other people, but you didn't mean to. And I just appreciate that you seem to tend to have the perspective of like, this is an adventure. This is a chance to learn and grow for me and the people I interact with in my dating life. And I love that about you. I think that's awesome. And I think it's so cool that we both come from a family of 9 kids. I think that's also really fun. um, what else was I going to say? There was something else. Oh, also, I'm looking forward to hearing more of your story, especially in regards to what you said you want to share about almost getting married, being engaged, because I'm of the believer that at least for those of us that are members of the church that want an eternal temple marriage, the goal has never been to just get married. Like the goal is a celestial marriage, right? Like the
Yeah.
goal is to find someone who's a really good fit that you can be equally yoked with and be able to work so well together that you can turn outward and bless the world rather than spending all of your energy trying to make things work between you, right? I It reminds me of a time when I was in the temple, the old Provo temple, with my buddy Josh, and we were, I think we were waiting in line to rent some clothes or something, and there was this cute little grandma temple worker that's standing there, kind of just chit chatting with people, and she's like, "Hey, are you guys missionaries?" And we're like, "No, not anymore. I mean, remember missionaries, but we're elders." Both of us had returned from our missions at that point, and yeah, we're like, "Yeah, we're just good buddies." And they're like, are you guys both already married?" Or we were like, "No, we're not. We're still working on that one." And she's like, "That's okay. It's better to be single than to be married to the wrong person." I was like, "Oh, thanks." Like it meant a lot. It almost felt like she gave me permission to like for it to be okay that I had chosen, not to get married yet or to pursue relationships I could have pursued. And I was like, that's true. Like it really would. I don't know. I guess I've imagined several times like being married to someone that I didn't feel like was a great fit or that I didn't quite feel settled about or I didn't feel peace about it. And like, yeah, I know that I wouldn't have yeah, I just feel like it would have been harder than the loneliness of still being single as long as I was. So, yeah. Any thoughts about that before I have you tee up with your 3 principles?
Yeah, actually, I do want to say something on that because I think you've hit the nail on the head. One of the biggest fears I had in when I realized that I may not be moving in the right direction by choosing to marry this individual was when I realized when I was feeling fearful of other people and the cultural expectations, the let's be real, there is pressure that just seems to kind of mount as the years pass. Whether that's
Mm-hmm.
true or not, it's often how it feels, and so it might as well be true for those of us who feel it. And so I was really worried about like, oh my goodness, what if I, am perceived as being weak or, not willing to, move forward and fulfill duty to my covenants and pursue the celestial kingdom and all of this and then I realized that what there is more to it than just checking the temple box. You need to make sure you use the words equally yoked. That is so important to be able to feel that and to have that together going into your lives that are going to go on forever. And so it's a I don't say that to add more pressure because that can sometimes add pressure. Like, oh my goodness, this is a decision that I have to sit with for eternity. But actually, I say it in a spirit of hope where, I discovered that I could choose my hard. And the hard that I chose was to make the call when I was feeling that unsettled feeling at first. So,
Yeah, I love
and I felt
that.
much more peace. Just letting you know, I did feel peace. So I know I made the right decision.
Yeah, it sounds like you followed President Monson's one of his last pieces of counsel. It's better to choose the harder right than the easier wrong,
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's really good.
I remember. I think that was his last or second to last talk he gave before he passed away. I remember him saying that, and I was just like, ooh, it's almost it's right up there with Think Celestial and Let God Prevail and so many other awesome prophetic, I guess, one-liners. So that's cool. Well, I'm excited to hear what your three principles are. Do you want to list those for us? Wait, three keys you said,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, so I've come up with a fun little title for my little uh, section of thoughts here, and
Yeah.
I've called it Shampoo, Baseball, and Dancing in the Rain. Three keys to intentional relationship building and finding joy in the journey.
Okay, hold on. I got to write that down. That's awesome. Shampoo, baseball, and dancing in the rain.
Yes, sir.
Dancing in the rain. And then what was after that?
Three keys to intentional relationship building and finding joy in the journey.
Okay. Awesome. I love it. Okay, you want to start
Awesome.
with your first key?
Sure, first key coincides with shampoo, which equals love and respect. So I'm going to put in a little plug for a book that, two books actually, that I just read um, this year. One is called Love and Respect, and it was an excellent book. The second book is called Love Factually, and both very different books, but both really good. And I found them personally beneficial and insightful. But I'm going to, for each key, I have a story and then a principle associated with the story. So this story is not about myself, but this is where the shampoo comes in. I recently heard another podcast where there was a guest. The guest on the podcast was a couple, and they were telling a story about how the wife, she was expecting a baby. They were very excited, so happy. They had tried and tried and tried, and they finally were expecting. And then the wife got sepsis, which is a life-threatening condition that arises when the body's response to infection causes injury to like its own tissues and organs. So basically, your body's like attacking itself,
Oh.
and it's a very serious condition. And so she was hospitalized, and this was at the height of the pandemic, and so she was hospitalized alone. Her husband couldn't be there with her. She literally was in a room by herself, dealing with this sickness, and um, due to the serious nature of the illness, she lost the baby
Mm.
and had to go through all of that without her husband physically being there to support. And anyway, she was there for, I think it was about 2 weeks that she was in the hospital. And finally, they allowed her husband to come in. And her husband, when he came, he brought shampoo and conditioner. And he washed her hair because she hadn't been able to wash her hair or bathe the
Oh.
whole time that she was there. And I just thought, as I listened to that, it just really hit me because I thought, that there are a billion different things that he could have shown up with. There are a billion different, ways he could have entered that hospital room after, worrying about her so much and all of this happening and losing their child and their unborn child and things like that. Yet he chose to think about her and what he could do to help her and then selflessly serve. And she, on the other hand, was, also humble enough to accept that service from him. And, even in the height of, she still was in very delicate condition. They still weren't sure if she was going to survive. And so I heard that story, and I heard them share that story with each other on that podcast. And I thought, that is a beautiful example of what, I think we sometimes um, talk a lot about what love feels like. Um, but what does love actually look like? And couple that with respect too, and you have this beautiful union of two huge characteristics that, when developed in a person, can just be so, so effective at maintaining and holding together a relationship, even in a really hard time. So I have a thought, we all need to feel this. We all need to feel loved and respected. Um, but and that goes for in action as well as word and emotion. So there's kind of these three, that we show love and respect through action, we show it through words, and we show it through, we feel it in our emotions as well. But they're kind of three separate things that we can think about um, separately and as a whole. Um, and so I had a word for both the men and the women. The men, something that I learned in this book was that it's helpful for men to remember that it's especially important to women to feel loved. And again, I'm speaking in general terms here, um, and from my personal experience, but it's highly effective to find her love language and practice using it. And it's something that really means a lot to women in addition to feeling respected. And then on the other hand, to men, um, I have a lot of brothers and a lot of friends who are men, and they all really place a lot of value on feeling respected as well as love. But respect is a big, big deal. And so, for us women, I think it's important for us to remember that it's important to them, and to find things, ways that help him feel that respect that we have for him. And we actually do those things, show those things, say those things, um, to the men in our lives, because it really is important that they feel that we respect them. And again, it goes both ways to both genders for both of those principles. But telling each other the things you love and respect about each other, that's a big deal. Showing it, and then communicating the feelings as well. There's those three parts that make the whole.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It sounds to me like if I were to sum it up, your first key is the importance of um, feeling respected and feeling loved, and showing respect and showing love. Is that right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Reminds me of the internship I did with Elisa Goodwin Snell. She's a dating coach that used to also do marriage and family therapy, and she she has her 17 secrets to the male psychology and 17 secrets to the female psychology, and both of them talk about a wide array of things. But one is, I guess, two specific points are each of their needs and each of the things they find attractive. And I remember the needs were, for men, it was to feel trusted and respected. And for women, it was to feel safe and secure. Um, and I think that there's a lot of connection there with what you just shared. Is
Yeah.
those needs. Obviously, women want to feel trusted and respected too, right? And obviously, men want to feel safe and secure in a relationship too. But the ratios might be slightly different if we're talking generally about the two different genders. Um,
Correct.
and and I also loved what you said about it being important for us to be willing to put in the effort to learn to speak someone's love language, even if it's not what we grew up learning how to speak. You know what I mean? My wife and I are learning those things. I grew up in a household where there was more verbal, like affirmations, right? Lots of, I guess, words of affirmation than there was in her family. And in her family, like playing games together and quality time was a really big one. And so, like, we're both kind of learning how to speak more of each other's kind of favorite love language, and it's work. It doesn't feel like it comes naturally sometimes, especially, if board games aren't my favorite, or if, saying really ooey gooey things aren't her favorite. Like, that's okay. Like, we can all learn, and that's something that, I guess, love takes work. Connection takes work. There's a price to pay for connection and for love, and yeah, to have that kind of healthy relationship.
Yes.
That's great. I love that. Any other thoughts on the first key?
No, first key, that's that. I can move
Okay,
on to baseball because there's a story for that one too.
cool.
Um,
Let's
we
play
had
baseball.
let's play baseball. So, so the what virtue associated with baseball is communicating for understanding, not just communicating, but communicating for understanding. So, um, there was a situation. I went on a date right after I got home from my mission with a guy who his name was Drew, and he did. I have to say, in preface to this story, he was very brave because he just kind of literally like ran into me on the street corner. It'd been like 2 years since he'd seen me, and he just asked me out right there on the spot. So I have to hand it to him for being a very brave soul to just go at it and just ask me. And it was very. I was like, of course, yes, I'll go to a baseball game with you. So we ended up at this baseball game, and I I'm watching baseball. I still don't understand baseball very well, though I was enjoying the moment and trying to understand and learn more about the game and and he had bought some sunflower seeds as well as of course I had gotten a hot dog and a nice big thing of lemonade. So I was there enjoying my hot dog and lemonade, and we were watching the baseball game, and he offered me some sunflower seeds, and I said, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll take some sunflower seeds," and was going forward with like how that like he like passed me the sunflower seeds, and I took them and I popped them in my mouth, and I started crunching away, and I realized like, gosh, these sunflower seeds are not as like chewable as the sunflower seeds I'm accustomed to eating. And anyway, as I continued to eat these sunflower seeds, they just would not go down. And finally, I was like, I can't just like spit them out. So I grabbed my my drink and I took a giant swig of lemonade and just gulped them all down. And then I continued watching the baseball game, and a couple seconds later, I realized he was looking at me kind of funny, and I said, "Oh, what?" And he was like, you're supposed to spit them out, right? And I was like, oh, am I supposed to spit them out? Somehow, in 20 whatever years of my life, I had never known that, or like been taught how to like shell sunflower seeds. So I ate the shells and all. And
Like, why do I have a mouthful of slivers?
I am okay. I suffered no ill health issues because of that, thank goodness. But yeah, it was really funny. We both laughed super hard after the realization dawned. But wow, what a perfect example of me seeing something, thinking I understood, and then just a kind of a little misunderstanding, translating into something that wasn't at all what actually was, and then him, from his perspective, watching me, just down 8 sunflower seeds, shelling out all, I can only imagine what was going through his head, right? and so, sometimes the principle is, sometimes something you think you understand gets close, but without a little more context from one or a question from the other to encourage the exchange of thought, it can be difficult to not end up feeling like you just swallowed a handful of sunflower seeds, right? And you're both kind of just like they're trying to figure it out. And so resist the urge to jump to conclusions prior to seeking understanding.
Yeah, I like that. I definitely have comments on that, but first you made me think of a time where I had quite the blunder on a date. Me and this girl went on a date at a park, and it was like fall, so it was like kind of like cooler weather, and so I was like, I'm gonna bring like a thermos of hot chocolate and some whipped
Mm-hmm.
cream, and we can like make fancy hot chocolate at the park. And so I did, and I had like one of those shaking bottles of whipped cream, and then my thermos was just like a water bottle that was like a thermos type water bottle. And I had like left the lid off, and there was still probably like that much hot chocolate in the bottom after we had been talking for a while. And I was going to get some more whipped cream, and so I grabbed what I thought was the whipped cream can and just started shaking it. Covered us both in hot chocolate. Oh, I got so wet.
So
Anyway, yeah, so you're not the only one who's done something silly on a date before.
thank goodness. And to all you listeners, I'm sure that you should just know you're not alone either now.
Yeah. And I love the analogy you drew from yours of communicating for understanding. It makes me think of an awesome CD set that they sold at Deseret Book for years, and I think they have it on bookshelf now. It's called For All Eternity by Dr. Lund, and it's a communication, a series of communication seminars that he did, where it was like the same people coming back every week for like 6 to 8 weeks, married couples, but I think it was supposed to be like specifically for like newlyweds. Maybe he talked about people that had been married a long time too. But anyway, member of the church, studied communication, and he talked about how most of what we are trying to communicate never actually gets through to the other person in general. Like they understand a very small percentage of what we meant to communicate, and that's just in everyday conversations. And he talked about how in his graduate work, the best technique they ever found for increasing that percentage that people actually understand to like, I don't know, I think it was pretty close to 100%, was something he called content communicating. And it's basically where you just spell it out. Like there's no sarcasm allowed, there's no like beating around the bush, there's no hint dropping allowed, like you spell it out. And not only do you spell it out, but the other person has to receive it as if you'd spelled it out. So if one of you accidentally says something sarcastic, for example, one of the examples he used was, say the husband's like, "Hey honey, you want to go to the movies?" And the spouse, the wife is like, "Yeah, I want to go to the movies." His response, if they've agreed to content communicate, is, "Great, let's go. Let's get in the car. I'm excited. I'm glad you're excited too." Even though she's obviously not excited, right? But he talked about how if two people decide to content communicate, way more understanding actually crosses from one person's brain to the other. And I thought that was fascinating. Really, really good set of communication principles taught in that thing. Highly recommended. It's called For All Eternity for all of our listeners that want to learn some really cool, yeah, relationship communication principles.
I love that. I actually just bought that book, so
Oh,
I
did
have
you?
yet to read it, but I will. Yeah, I'm
It's
gonna
a book
take that
too?
advice. Yes, yeah, I
Oh,
have it in
cool.
print. Got it off Amazon, so
Okay.
yeah.
That's
But
awesome.
I mean, how many times have we actually, sat there in a situation, whether it's in a dating relationship or even in my professional, I'm an executive assistant and office manager for my career, and I almost, almost every day I have these moments where you're just wondering, wait, am I fully understanding, is what that person said, it's hard to sometimes resist the urge to read between the lines because sometimes people communicate that way expecting that.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't like that feeling. I try to avoid that in my personal communications. So we're all working on it and we all have our moments, but it's a huge principle that I totally agree with what you just said, because if you think about the energy that you use, and I would even go so far to say waste, trying to understand and decode, people's communications, man, it'd be so much better to just say in a dignified way, what you
Yeah.
mean and mean what you
Kind,
say. And
considerate ways. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah, content communicating. Yes, taking things at face value. when it's something that you've agreed on. I guess there are times where you haven't agreed with a coworker to content communicate, and so you have to read between the lines a little bit. But wouldn't it be great if the whole world did that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes just asking questions can get that, like, get it to a point of being
Good
like,
point.
oh, people are willing to share if they feel like they're able to share. So that's
Yeah,
helpful.
being a safe place, and yeah, I like that a lot. That's cool. Yeah. Anything else on key number two?
Well, we're ready for point number three, key
Okay,
number
rock and
three.
roll.
Okay, so key number three is dance in the rain. And my sub point to that is just be present. Be
Hmm.
present in the now. This is something that after ending my engagement with Mason, I thought, this is something that I want to really practice um, going forward because I don't want to turn cynical. I don't want to become so caught up in the sadness. Make no mistake, I sit here and I smile and I laugh and I am positive, but it there have been many tears shed and many prayers offered up, just asking for understanding, asking for Heavenly Father to help me see what it is I need to learn from this journey. And so there are moments that dancing in the rain does not sound fun, or or being present in my singlehood does not sound like something that I want to keep doing. But there's this image that I've been holding in my mind, and this is I'm going to explain this image, and then I'll share the principle behind it. That when I think about it, I remember. But as I move forward here into this next chapter of my life, I just picture myself standing out in a beautiful, it could be a spring rain, summer rain, fall rain, something where you're not too cold, not too hot, and then you're just out there, no umbrella, looking up at the sky with your arms open, your head up, and just taking in what's coming to you. And the rain could represent. I'll let you decide what it represents to you. To me, it represents the good and the bad. There, you get a little bit of both, or a lot of one and less of another, depending on what period of life you're in and what you're going through at that moment. But it's all coming to you, and it's been wonderful to envision myself there in that rain with my arms open, not just, huddled under, some eave somewhere just waiting for it to pass, but actually like seeking to feel it, to experience it and to embrace it and then like dance in it, not just stand there, but like dance. I like to dance. So that's my
That
imagery.
I love that. It's so good. I like to dance too. It's I feel like it can be such a I don't know, such a cool way to kind of celebrate life and feel gratitude for the blessings we have. Um, yeah, you made me think of like being in the moment and kind of living in the now. Made me think of I don't know how I wish I would have done that more in my dating life. Um, I was a very, very proactive dater, and if we're talking about like attachment styles, definitely edged toward like the anxious side, where I was like overly proactive a lot of times. And for a long time, dating kind of was my social life. Like I spent like most of my free time with other people doing fun things on dates. And I don't know that that's necessarily like a horrible way to go about it for the first little while after like, we kind of reach adulthood and start college or finish a mission or whatever. Because it's good to get lots of practice, right? But I would say that if I could go back and change it, I would have lived more in the moment and been more in the present by um, enjoying the friendships I was making, um, spending more of my social life time enjoying and deepening friendships too. I think that that would have helped me like be a little bit less stressed and anxious if I had spent, rather than 100% of my free time on dates, if I had spent like 30% on dates, always open, obviously, to ask someone out or meet someone new, keeping doors open. But I wish I would have spent like 70% of my free time doing fun things with family and with friends and planning extracurricular adventures and stuff that just don't work with my schedule now that I'm married and we have a baby, right? Lots of my friends, would plan trips to faraway places and do fun things, and I almost never went because I was working or I was so focused on like, yeah, well, I already know who's going and I'm not interested in any of them. It's like, well, that's not the only reason to like go have fun and enjoy life and be in the present. You know what I mean? So I wish I would have done that differently, and that's something that I hope helps our listeners is that, living in the present and just being grateful for what God has given you right now and thoroughly enjoying that rain as it comes down. There's a lot more to that than just enjoying getting to know the people you're interested in and going on dates.
Yes. But that's such a good, I totally agree with you. And I love that perspective because it can sometimes be easy to lose sight of the here and now in our desire to progress towards the future. And you try to plan. I'm very much a planner. It serves me well in certain areas of life and in my profession and everything. But sometimes, yeah, especially in relationships and with dating, the moment is so crucial. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so true. Not to mention, I've really felt like I've really felt a shift in my ability to deepen friendships and make new friendships. Like I can still make new friends now that I'm married and we have a baby, but so much of my time and energy has to be focused on that high priority of family that, to be honest, I feel like most of the time I do spend with friends is maintaining friendships that were already deep
Mm.
when I got married. And I never really anticipated that. I never really anticipated that shift from like being able to stay up late talking to a friend and and connecting and hearing their story and you know comforting them or being comforted by them when you're going through something hard or just laughing and being silly. Like I think I took some of those things for granted a little bit because I never quite grasped the fact that those precious moments of deep connection and building like lasting friendships, they aren't going to come nearly as frequently after you start a family because there's a higher priority now. And so it's like I'm really really grateful. Like I wouldn't trade the time um, I had to build those deep friendships and connections for anything, even getting married earlier, because they continue to bless my life now, and so yeah, I feel like that's another way that we can live in the moment is drink in the opportunities we have to build and deepen friendships and minister, frankly, to other people like we'll never have again in our lives.
I think that is a key and maybe a question that we could all ask ourselves in the here and now. Just sit down with yourself and ask if something were to happen to me tomorrow that completely changed my circumstances from
Mm,
what they are today, whatever that is, don't even label it. Just ask if something were to happen that completely changed my circumstances, what would I miss
mm,
about today? What would I wish that I could go back and do more of? I was finding some of that happening to me in this last, situation with my engagement, and so when I had, interestingly, what I view as a second chance, or maybe it's a third chance at this point. But to go back and to now kind of hit the reset button and try again, having learned yet more lessons from those experiences and the ones that I've had prior as well, I have found myself really valuing certain things that I was really going to miss. Like, yeah, like the friends that I've had that have been with me through this all and through some really happy times and some really sad times. That's actually one of the principles, or just like pieces of insight that I wanted to say on this point was that, you know, look around as you're trying to be in the here and now. Look around at who is there with you. Find the ways to feel peace now, today. Learn new things. Be true to yourself. Resist the pressure that will come. And after all that, and as you do all that, excuse me, look around at who's there with you, and just hold those experiences and those people dear, because and then take those lessons into the next chapter of your life,
Mm.
because like there's going to be things that when you have your little baby that you won't be able to get back, when that baby's grown and out of the house, and but then you have grandkids, or then you have the next, every chapter has something that is just so precious to gain from it. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I've been thinking a lot about friendship. Something I just put in my book that I was recording. I'm recording an audiobook right now,
Mhm.
for the book I want to launch soon. And one of the things I've been thinking about is how those that learn to be really, really good friends while they're single make really, really good husbands and wives when they're married.
Whew, I agree
Because
with that.
ultimately, like, the honeymoon phase is a thing, and you can keep that spark and that fun romantic energy alive, but there does come a point where most of your day with your spouse is just like hanging out with a best friend, and it takes communication skills and patience and empathy for that friendship to be a healthy, happy one that you enjoy, right? And so that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately too. And another way I think we can live in the here and now is by improving our ability as friends, which is only going to bless our marriages in the future. That kind of a thing.
I agree. So
Yeah.
true. Well, and there's even ways to find that nourishment in the hard times. Like that, I wanted to, I have a tendency when I speak to, because I practice a lot looking at the positive, that's something that always comes forward first. But there are definitely those moments when you really don't feel positive, you really don't feel that happy, rosy outlook. It's people tell you, "Oh, be patient," or
Mm-hmm.
people ask you, "How is it that a great girl like you, who da da da," and they usually have some qualities that they list off. I'm sure it happens to guys too, is still single. And in those moments, I sometimes go, "Oh, if you find out, I would love to know." But you just have to kind of laugh about it, otherwise you cry. But
I've been
there's
there. Totally been there.
yeah, but that's something that I wanted to be sure to talk about in this last point, is just you know trying to be grateful even when you feel like you may not have much to be grateful for, trying to see that positivity even when it can feel really hard at times. I remember a moment after making one of my very hard relationship decisions, um, hanging up the phone with the guy that I was going on dates with, that had just broken up with, and feeling like I couldn't, literally like I couldn't breathe. Like there was just, I called my dad and I was crying and I was talking to him, and then when I got off the phone, I remember sitting and thinking, I don't know if I can handle like the next 2 minutes. My heart is just breaking. It felt so sad. And the thought of surviving, a happy life for the next however many years until the right opportunity hit me, or I found that right opportunity, it was really, really daunting. And so just, you know, it's one of those moments where you can, it was helpful for me to remember that I could just focus on the next minute. I could focus on the minute after that. I didn't have to go all the way to the end and work backward. And here I am today, many minutes later, many days later, and yeah, not without my challenges and stresses and things that I'm constantly working on, but definitely having built some more hope and definitely really seeing the things that are coming down in that rain that are good too, in addition to, the learning experiences that can be labeled challenges.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's another good definition of living in the moment. Just taking things 1 minute at a time, one day at a time when things are hard. And I think going along with that, being willing to live in the moment of pain so that you can understand, so you can learn whatever it is God wants you to learn from that pain, because there's usually something that we can. For me, oftentimes it's like, man, I feel like really anxious right now, or I feel really fearful, or I feel really hurt, and it's like, for me, oftentimes if I ask myself the question, man, well, first off, if I'm feeling like my emotional reaction is a little bit more extreme than it might be under other circumstances, if I ask myself the question, what does this remind me of? Oftentimes, I can think of another situation where I felt hurt, or whatever the emotion is, that maybe I never fully resolved, that maybe I never fully came to peace with. And if I readdress the one that reminded me of in the past, and I kind of take a new look at that past experience through my older eyes now, then I can oftentimes kind of like understand it better, and like give myself some slack, or forgive the person that hurt me back then because they were just a kid or whatever. And all of a sudden I feel better about that experience, and all of a sudden I feel less extremely negative about the present, and sometimes completely better. And so I think that's another interesting way to think about living in the present, is not running away from or numbing the pain, but asking ourselves, why is this so painful? What does this remind me of? What is it God wants me to learn or change about, change about my paradigm about relationships, right? Is there something from the past I need to readdress and kind of think through again and change a belief, something I'm believing that's not quite true about relationships or about myself in relation to the world? Or anyway, we're getting kind of, I don't know, this is kind of what's the word? Some people would term this airy fairy, or things like that. We're kind of diving into a deeper way of talking about this, but for me, that really has been super helpful, is living in the moment, and trying to process, work through, and come to peace about things rather than running from them.
Oh, I really love that, and I wrote that down actually. Thank you, because that's a great question that I think will really help me, because I tend to lean towards the more, if I'm going to be either avoidant or anxious instead of in a more secure place, I definitely lean towards the anxious. And it usually is because of something, that I'm reminded of, yeah, from the past. And so that's really a good key. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it when it comes to the tending toward the anxious. My roommates and I, we used to always ask each other that question if one of us was really upset because of really, really, really in pain or really sad or whatever. And it's like, hey, can I talk to you about something? I just like got to get this off my chest. And we start talking, and oftentimes me and a specific roommate would be like, Well, what does that remind you of? It's like, oh yeah, that one relationship that went really poorly, and you're right. I need to rethink that. Okay, yeah, let's talk through that. Okay, yeah, I feel better.
Oh, that's great. It's amazing what turning on like the like thinking part of your brain is. That's what we call it in my family.
Mm,
We've got our little emotional piece of our brain, but then we've got the thinking center of our brain that,
yeah.
if you just sometimes it's just one question that can help turn that tide and wake you up and be like, "Oh, yeah. Okay."
Logically, everything's gonna be fine. Emotionally, I'm still a little raw, but
Right. Yeah.
logically, I know it's gonna be okay.
Yes.
Uh, that's awesome. Well, these have been such valuable keys, Melanie. Thank you. Do you have any final recommendations you want to share with our listeners today?
Yes, I just have one final thought, and that goes for this goes for everyone, anyone who's listening. I would just say, as I was thinking about sharing thoughts and experiences on this podcast, I thought, what could I possibly say that, would be something that, sometimes it's easy to feel like you're kind of almost an imposter syndrome, where you're like, well,
Mm,
we're all still here, we're all still trying. I am the girl that's unengaged, right? What could I
mm,
possibly say? But this is something that um, it all boils down to for me, as and I would like to share with everybody, and that is trust that there is a reason for the experiences you are having today, the ones you had yesterday, and the ones that will come tomorrow.
mm.
And that you can say and trust and believe in whatever situation you're in right now. Like, you could be married and with a beautiful baby and a beautiful wife or a handsome husband. You could be single and happy, single and sad, single somewhere in between for now, in a relationship but not married yet. And just trust that there is a reason for the experiences you're having today, yesterday, and tomorrow.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. God doesn't waste any of the experiences he allows us to go through. Or to put that in scriptural terms, all things work together for the good of the righteous. And
Yeah.
that means yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Amen.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, I think you hit on a point that people can probably relate to in a lot of areas in their life is the imposter syndrome. I felt that for years with trying to be a dating coach while I was still single. I literally did a fireside for I think it was at least one steak. It might have been a couple steaks, and I did a Q&A at the beginning, just like I liked to start off where I was like, any burning questions before I start with what I prepared. This one guy raises his hand and he's like, why should we listen to you? You're not even married. I was like, because I care and I study this stuff and I want to help. uh, yeah, so I get it. It's so easy to feel like if we haven't achieved a specific, beginning of a new chapter in our lives, that it's so easy to feel like from a worldly perspective we don't have anything to offer, and that's a complete lie. Like we always have something that we can offer when we care enough to share. when
Yeah.
we have a desire to help, there's value to be shared there, and value to be received if people are willing and open to receive it. And so, yeah, I guess just for all of our listeners, like everything Melanie shared today is on point, and it's valuable, and I highly recommend using it in your lives.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Well, Melanie, thanks again for coming on. Any last thoughts?
No, just thank you so much. And let's all just keep going forward with a smile, right?
I love it. That positivity again. There it is. The adventure continues, right?
It does. It does. It's a good adventure.
Cool. Thanks again, Melanie.
Thank you.
Okay, my friends, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out more of my content and services at natejclark.podia, that's Podia.com. And I'll catch you next time.